You know, it's something that Don Granger brought to our company about 6 years ago. Don talked to me and said, let's get Chris on board, Chris McQuarrie, who I worked with on Valkyrie and Mission Impossible and this and other things.
He brought me the book, said he'd had it for a number of years and wanted to make it into a film, asked if I would adapt it. I read the book and I fell in love with this character, his voice, his mind, and the way he lives, the way he moves around, and I decided I wanted to do it.
At this time, the Jack Reacher series was heating up at Paramount, and what I mean by that is the books had become so popular that the studio basically has said, you know, we have to exploit this now or never.
You can start anywhere in this series, so it's not like you've got to start with the first one or whatever. It was a question of One Shot, I think, came to their attention at the time. It's what grabbed their attention those years ago. And then I think they examined the whole series and came back to the conclusion, no, One Shot would be a great place to start because it's got a good, meaty, solid procedural plot with plenty of twists and turns, plenty of surprises, plenty of action. And it also, for some reason that I was not really aware of at the time, but it does act as a great introduction to the character. All the character is there. All the good parts of Reacher, the interesting parts, are all in that book.
How do we find this Reacher?
Obviously, you don't find this guy unless he wants to be found.
Excuse me, sir. There's a Jack Reacher here to see you.
There was going to be controversy no matter what. You were never going to find an actor who fit the rather extreme physical characteristics as are described in the books.
Can I help you?
James Barr.
I'm a huge fan of the Jack Reacher novels. I've read every novel at least twice. And to really sort of synthesize Jack Reacher down to just his physical size, I think does a disservice to the character. There's so much about Reacher, his dry wit, his great intelligence, his tactical mind, the way he fights, that we're capturing, I promise you, and it's very important to Chris and Tom and I to capture it directly from the novels.
Any chance I could look at the evidence?
No way. Not till you answer some
Nice
questions.
meeting you.
Hey,
Mr. Reacher. Hey! I was actually shooting Mission, and I read the script. I was producing it, and then you just read the screenplay, and it's such an incredible character, an incredible story. I said to Chris, I said, listen, if you're interested in me, I would like to, I'd like to play it. And if, Lee Child feels we have his stamp of approval, it's something I'd love to do, but it's your decision, I mean, he's the director, and so that's kind of how it evolved. I said, otherwise, I'll just produce it.
Tom sort of approached this a little bit trepidatiously. He knew Reacher's size. He knew that there would be an expectation. He knew that there would be a reaction. So while he loved the books and he knew the character, he would only do the movie if it was blessed by Lee.
Don Granger and I made sort of a pilgrimage to New York before we'd ever really officially discussed casting. And we had dinner with Lee and walked him through the whole process, walked him through the realities of casting, the realities of filmmaking, and we're leading Lee carefully down the road towards this decision. And Lee knew where we were going the whole time. And he moved to the end game before we even got there. And we said, we're very concerned about how you feel about this. We're very concerned about the fans. And Lee said, he's the greatest movie star who ever lived. Why wouldn't I want him playing Jack Reacher?
I could understand what people are saying if I had walked past, 24 6'5" actors who weigh 250 pounds with his talent.
Action!
If I'd walked past them and said, no, let's go with Tom Cruise, I could see there's a point to be made. But the point is there aren't those actors. Those actors don't exist. I felt like there are 1,000 things to worry about turning a book into a movie, but the exact physical replica of the character is not one of them.
When I go to produce a film, there's certain things that I know, that how I can prep something so that we have the opportunity to get the most out of the film and out of the sequence. On a movie set, you have, particularly today, that with the cost of making a film and the cost of marketing movies, is that I look to how do I optimize. I've always felt that every day that I'm on a movie set, I don't get that day back.
But we want it to look like a $120 million movie. How do we do that? And the only way to do that is to have Tom shoot with 2 units. I don't know anyone else who would do that. Voluntarily do that as producer and star of the movie, say, yes, I will work 30 hours in a row. And by the way, 15 of them are going to be performing incredibly dangerous stunts.
The minute guns start going off, the minute cars start crashing, the minute people start fighting, I'm at home with that. I feel great about it. I love it. I love doing it. I love planning it. And none of that really intimidates me. When I get to a place where two people have to sit down at a table and have a conversation, and that conversation has to be dramatic, and it has to move the story along, and it has to have pace, and it has to have tension, those are the hardest things. And you're really relying on great actors to elevate the work that you brought to them. And to be the writer and the director and not have a writer to lean on and not have a writer to blame. It's really all comes down to everybody is looking at you now and saying, well, what do we do?
So why are you so hard to find?
I'm impossible to find.
Why is that?
Well, you could say it started out as an exercise, became an addiction. Rosamund, first of all, she's so beautiful in the way that is classic. You know, when I look at Grace Kelly or you look at Faye Dunaway, those characters that she just brings an intelligence and a complexity and a charm to, you know, to her character and on screen. And she's just very dynamic, enormously talented. I had such a great time acting with her.
What developed was a really great sort of professional rapport between these two characters who in any other universe would have been romantically involved, but because of who they are and because of the lives they've chosen, they never can be. And we didn't want that to overwhelm the story. Hey, Mark. Hey, Mark. And my direction to Tom from the very beginning was, you know, you can be charming with Helen, but you can never charm her, because you know that when all of this is over, you're going to leave, and you would never get involved with somebody that you would have to leave behind.
So where's your lead investigator?
About to catch a bus out of town.
Thanks for the coffee, counselor.
I was interested in playing this character if he'd allow me not to make her the sort of stereotypical lawyer as seen in a lot of Hollywood fare. You know, I think we've come to sort of see a type of law portrayed on film that has become so sort of perfect and groomed and manicured and slightly cold and hard-edged. And I was interested in finding the sort of humanity of this woman, you know, someone who's actually trying to present a polished front but is, you know, struggling to hold it all together.
In terms of how Hollywood is going to look at Jack Reacher, unlike practically any other story, there is no character arc within a Reacher story. The guy is not different at the end. You know, he doesn't go on a journey. He doesn't learn anything because he knew it all at the beginning. He is a very smart guy, and he's constant throughout the book with very little development. So what it needed was, quite simply, it needed people that got it. You know, just that simple word, do you get the character?
The biggest challenge of adapting the screenplay is how much the books spend time in Reacher's mind, really inside his head, and how he thinks, how he processes information, how he sees the world. And it was finding an interesting way to visualize that so that it wasn't always Reacher telling you exactly what he was thinking. And Lee was so fantastic and so supportive throughout. I think largely because Lee and I really clicked on what we thought was most important about this character to bring out, which was his mind.
I remember when he sent me the script, that's a very trepidatious moment. You know, you're going to read the screenplay that somebody has developed from your book.
I think one of the best calls I ever got, maybe the best call, was when Lee called me after he read Chris's script and was overwhelmingly pleased.
I read it. I then immediately reread it just for the pleasure of it because it was so good. And I have never done that. I've never read anything back to back twice. What I was really thrilled about the script was that obviously a lot was taken out, but nothing had been put in. What was left was my book. The spine of it was intact. even though the excess had been removed.
And I'm very, very sorry. And I promise I won't bother you again.
I mean, it was interesting playing the whole relationship with Richard, because at first I sensed he was quite resistant to having this dysfunctional relationship, because I think Richard Jenkins in real life has a very, very close relationship with his daughter. So I think he felt that there wasn't enough communication and that we didn't understand these two at all.
You never even spoke to your client before he wound up in a coma. Oh, now listen to me. Listen, I'm speaking as your father. Whatever our differences have been in the past, you gotta listen to me now. You're making a terrible mistake.
There's another movie here. I would love to know how they got here. I mean, we all have our ideas about it, but it's not explored in the film. But you don't need that, because the only thing that's important is that they're there, and there's a real butting of heads, and it's a really great father-child relationship. It is.
You know, you realize the reason Chris McQuarrie is such a good writer is that he economically gives you a great amount of stuff to play with. The scenes seem beguilingly straightforward when you read them, and then when you come to voice them, there are all kinds of subtle ways that you can change them, tweak them, change the dynamics, change, well, the moods of the characters, really. There are a million ways of saying, when Helen says to her father at the end of that scene, "Don't touch me." You know, there's a "don't touch me" that is someone who desperately wants a cuddle, you know, who just really wants her father, you know, so that because you get kids who just push and push and push, and actually all they want is love, but they can't ask for it. You know, and I think Helen is a bit like that.
Why? For what? To hurt me? To change me? Helen.
Don't touch me!
Sound speed?
Yeah, Mark. Ready, camera, and action.
When I first sat down with Chris, something he felt very strongly about is that he wanted whoever played Emerson to be someone who felt like a sort of yang to the yin of Reacher, in a sense. Someone who you could kind of see these guys teaming up, and that possibly being a good thing, but the fact that whenever they're together, you kind of feel like there is a slight rivalry.
Action.
Find any holes?
Didn't have to kill his dog. Other than that, damn fine police work. Open and shut.
And one of the reasons he wanted me to play the part is that he felt that my energy as a person, as it were, was not a bad guy. You know, was not someone who you would go, ooh, there goes the mustache with a little twiddle. Yeah, well, anytime you want to come back, take a look at this stuff.
Thanks, don't need to.
Didn't make any notes.
Don't need to.
When we then got into the actual shooting of the movie, you have to see on second viewing some of what might be going through Emerson's mind, even though on the first viewing you read it as just a detective who's just trying to do a good job. On second viewing, hopefully you're reading, this is a guy who is trying to keep it together, considering the mess he has found himself in, considering he has sold his soul to the devil.
He's about to fire 6 shots into a crowd of strangers, and he's worried about the meter maid?
Simple loony won't do it for you?
I like to have at least one alternate theory.
Habit. Muscle memory. I don't think he knew he was doing it.
And now let's bring it into the physical.
The Rolls-Royce treatment is what the movie is getting and is what I'm getting. They are so generous, so inclusive. They want me to do this particular little tiny scene where I hand Reacher his possessions. And of course, as you know, Reacher has no possessions, except he has a toothbrush. And they felt it'd be a very sweet moment if I, as the author, hands over the toothbrush to Reacher, the character on the screen, as a kind of talisman or a symbolic moment.
Hey, roll camera, please.
71, take 15.
Okay, set. Ready, and action.
If someone followed you at the river today, it was probably a cop, and I highly doubt
There are
it.
3 things cops never do. They don't vote Democrat, they don't drive Cadillacs, and they never use personal vehicles. It's not a cop.
I didn't ask to be in it. They said, would you do this? And I was thrilled because, first of all, yeah, I'd love to be in a movie, but also because they totally get it. They understand why that would be a fun moment for me and also a fun moment for the book readers, I think.
We love working on a movie set. Visiting a movie set is a different experience entirely. It's fascinating for about 30 minutes, then it becomes very tedious. And to his credit, Lee came down a few times during production, and he hung out all night. Really loved the process, loved watching it, loved being involved.
It was great having him at the read-through, too.
Yes, and he was there for the read-through as well.
He was there for the read-through, and we just told him anytime, please come. You know, this is your character. You know, we have such respect for you, and we just want it to be a great experience for him and something that, you know, that we're honoring his stories and his character. And I think that it was a great collaboration.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Lee Child's one shot in the movie.
I asked Mindy Marin, my casting director, I said, I want to cast the villain with someone that is not immediately familiar to audiences. Somebody European, but somebody that's immediately going to strike a chord when you see him on screen. And she didn't hesitate. The first name out of her mouth was Werner Herzog.
I made a mistake. I mean, you can still use me. Just tell me how to fix it.
Survive. Don't say fix it, because you can't. We covered up the one mess. You made another.
All right, you're right.
Chris's reaction was my reaction, which is, yeah, sure, okay. Orson Welles, I mean, you know, what are you talking about? And it turned out Mindy knew that Werner was actually looking to do some acting. And he had heard about this project and the pedigree of Chris McQuarrie and Tom Cruise. And McQuarrie was beside himself and thought this would be amazing. And Werner read the script and said, yeah, absolutely, I want to do it.
Werner Herzog is an extraordinary filmmaker in his own right, and he was so excited to come in and make this kind of movie.
It is interesting for me to watch how others work. I have been in quite a few films before as an actor, and I do believe that Chris McQuarrie and Tom Cruise saw some of my performances, and they wanted to have me in the film. Apparently because I'm the one who looks dangerous before I even speak. So it comes easy to me to play a part where I'm hostile and dangerous and vile and debased and dysfunctional. I was in prison in Siberia. I spent my first winter wearing a dead man's coat, a hole in one pocket. I'd shoot these fingers off before the frostbite could turn to gangrene. And I had the feeling, yes, my accent is not Russian, it's German, but it doesn't really matter. I just speak with my accent. And I also had the feeling, and that's what I told Chris McQuarrie, I'm looking too well fed, and I said I'm gonna lose more than 20 pounds. Only now, in my last few days of shooting, I actually have lost 22, 23 pounds. People ask me, yeah, what sort of diet do you use? What kind of diet? I said, the simplest diet of them all, just eat less. That's it. Just eat 1/3 of what you normally eat. I can't! Always the bullet. I don't understand.
Hey, Mark.
You got some fine shooters here.
Yeah. Yeah, fine as frog's hair. Rare, too, because some of them fellas out there can't shoot worth a damn.
Robert was Tom's suggestion and the first name that came up very early on. And I didn't think that was ever going to happen. I didn't think Robert Duvall was going to sign on so late in the process for what I imagine to be a smaller role. He comes very late in the movie and has only a few scenes with Tom. And much to my surprise and to the movie's benefit, Robert said he would do it.
Them boys out there are awful touchy about their constitutional rights. Suppose I tell them a cop is in here asking after my members.
He brought Duvall to the movie. You know, he's an icon. He's given some of the greatest performance in cinema. I was so happy when he said that he would do it. I mean, Chris and I were in the car together, we were high-fiving each other because, you know, I like films where you think you know the movie and then suddenly there's this treasure.
Tom, he asked that maybe I would come be a part of this, and I had worked with him before. He's a terrific guy to work with, one of the best. I'd worked with him years ago in Days of Thunder. He can cover both roads coming and going, and kill you just as soon as you stand up. I had a bit of a bum leg. I didn't know if I could do it, but then I healed up and came up, and we've come 4 times from Virginia. It's a 4.5-hour drive. It's nice.
Well, can you take him out?
What, to dinner, you mean? A lot of laughs, a lot of hugs, a lot of joking around, you know, and it was good. We picked up right where we left off. It was a delight to be able to do that.
And how do you propose we get him started?
Well, you could always start running.
We're just playing, and that's a wonderful thing to happen at the end of all those nights. It was just very exciting to have him there on set and in the movie.
Cut.
You don't want to fall back on that fight. Yeah. You know, great. Yeah. So good. That felt good, Bobby.
I picked the quarry on a nice, sunny, bright day, and it was before the winter in Pittsburgh had really set in. And when we got to the quarry location at night in foul weather, I had some small sense of what Napoleon felt like on his way out of Russia.
Ready and action!
That trailer scene at the end, we were on a soundstage in Pittsburgh in January, and it was so cold. Heaters, just nothing worked, and I was wet, soaking wet to the bone. I was freezing. I was born in October. When I get to my birthday, I'm gonna pull the trigger. 1, 2.
Człowiek. Zach Człowiek.
Werner Herzog, he was right there with me, giving me everything off camera, and that means a lot to me when people do that.
We'll see which one of us goes to prison.
My bet? Neither one.
What did you do?
Tom's just a great collaborator, and so I don't really think of Tom as a star or as a producer as much as I do as a partner in telling a story. Nobody works harder to justify your $10, $12, probably $20 that you're spending on a movie ticket, and comes to the process with no agenda other than telling the best story and supporting me and supporting the film. It's the kind of movie they don't make anymore. You know, it's the sort of movie I grew up watching and wanted to see again. It's a lot of fun. More fun, I think, than we even realized it was.
You have something for me?
Yeah. Yeah.
You're kidding, right?
We were so focused on this the whole time that it was only when we stepped back and looked at it that we realized we'd come up with something much different than we'd set out to make.
Chris and I, you know, kind of we always talk about what, I hope the audience, you know, you want the audience to invest in it and really enjoy it. That's why I make movies.
He called me a whore.
Is that true?
Nobody said whore. She inferred hooker. I meant slut.
Hey, That's our sister.
She a good kisser? You're okay. Get up. To see an audience sit there and laugh at the things that we laughed at, but laugh even harder and find, you know, different other moments that show that they're so invested in the story. It's wonderful. It feels, you know, very good.
What we wanted to do in this movie was go the opposite of some action movies that have been made for the last five or 10 years. There's no martial arts. There's no wire work. We wanted to do some brutal street fighting the way Jack Reacher fights.
It was designing a fighting style. We didn't want it to feel excessively overtrained. We wanted it to feel very real and very visceral. The other thing that was very important is we didn't want everybody waiting their turn to fight. That we wanted it to feel very kinetic and very much like a street fight.
Remember, you wanted this.
The biggest component probably was we didn't want editing to create action where there was none. We wanted to be able to execute a fight scene where you could stand back from it and watch it as though you were watching a street fight, as opposed to something that was assembled in the cutting room and you felt like something had happened, but it all happened too quickly. And that takes a lot of discipline, because you have to be willing to let certain pieces of action unfold slower than you normally would. And more importantly, the action has to look real without any help from the camera. That means the hits are harder and they're a lot closer, and the fights themselves are a lot more chaotic.
He's got to be a threatening guy. It's not a defense system. He is someone who will hurt you in order to defend himself. And if you enter that arena, you're going to get hurt.
Really? God, really nice. That's good. Are you all right? Good.
We met these guys who have a fighting system called KC Fighting Method. And it's a street fighting method developed by the gypsies in Spain, actually, by a guy called Justo Dieguez and his co-founder Andy Norman. And it's a system which basically says, if you come into my space, I'm going to destroy you. So don't come into my space. And we thought that would work really well for Reacher.
I don't want anything to get too over choreographed, so I trained him how to fight in that particular style. I worked with him for about a couple months, and pretty much on a daily basis.
Sometimes 12 o'clock at night, Tom will come in and go, let's do 2 hours training. It's 24/7. He's, boom, you know, let's train.
Yeah, there you go. That's a big one. See that bring back. Yep.
Rob Alonso actually taught Tom how to fight for this movie, so that when he goes into a fight mentally, he's there. He's there, he knows he can take you down. He's not an actor doing moves. He's an actor fighting.
All right, let's shoot, guys. We're ready. Number ones, please. We're ready to shoot.
Once, you know, we nailed the choreography, we had Caleb there, Chris, everyone was looking at it going, okay, here's how I want to shoot it. Here's, you know, we have that down. It was just repetitive. Like what I do with action is I just keep rehearsing, because the timing has to be pretty spot on. Otherwise, someone's going to get badly, it's going to all go so wrong. Someone's going to get badly hurt.
Yes.
Like the bathroom scene.
Yes, the fight in the bathroom is completely different.
It was having to back up to that door, and it's all in one shot. You know, Chris is going to do it all in one shot, and every time it was, you know, as I'm stepping back, you know.
I was more nervous then than
That was the most, it's like, put me in that car.
Yeah.
Put me in the car, having a blind, you know, normally when stuff's coming at me in a fight, I have spatial awareness. This is, I have to back up to a point and I'm just waiting. You know, everyone's waiting as everyone's leaning forward when that bat was coming through.
Tom! Tom, you good? Did he hit him? Tom, you good? No. No, looked like it. Oh, that was awesome. Holy crap.
We built the set around the choreography.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's typical of our working relationship. I had written a scene, you know, in this very small bathroom, in this very small space, and the fight that I wrote was very quick and very violent and showed how Reacher, even when he's down, he's never finished and he can fight his way out. Tom read the scene and he said, you know, there's a great opportunity for humor in this scene. You have two big guys who've chosen a really terrible place to beat somebody up. And what Tom really wanted to do is, he said, I want a fight scene where if they'd waited for me to step out into the hallway, they would have won. They really chose a poor battleground. And I like that idea, and it's very brave, I think, for an actor to do that. You're not accustomed to actors saying, yeah, I should have gotten my ass kicked. If I'd taken one step back farther, I would have lost this fight.
It's a complex fight because there's so much to break in there. Everything gets smashed. Things like the tiles breaking, people falling into a bath, it's got to be soft, the window breaks, the mirror breaks, the lamps break. It's a planning nightmare.
I got this!
It's a very quick scene, but the amount of conversations we had about the house, about that bathroom set, constantly looking at the space, how big, how small, what stuff should be in there, what stuff should be broken. And that's also something where we look at, okay, here's the budget we have. How do we maximize character and storytelling and make it exciting? How do we do it in a way where the audience never loses geography, we're on character? And it's a real challenge because it's, you know, the instinct is, well, let's go cut, cut, cut to make it exciting. How do we make it tense, have a level of violence, yet still let the audience know this is dangerous, but you're going to be okay. You're okay, you know, because it's always, the tipping point can be in a point where the audience, it's just too much. It's a fine line we're riding with the tone of this film.
Got it? Okay. Good.
Okay, ready, and roll camera, please. Ready, and go!
We looked at the geography of the quarry and we just thought, how would this be cool? Chris, it's all in the details. The details have to be right so that if a Navy SEAL does watch this show and sees what we're doing, he'll go, oh, okay, they get it. Chris McQuarrie's brother, Doug McQuarrie, had an awful lot of input in that sequence, and he's an ex-Navy SEAL, so he could come in and apply proper military tactics.
Well, what's your bigger fear, him or them?
My bigger fear would be the two guys closer with full auto.
That would worry me too, but you've got Cash up there, right? Just put them back?
And I'm assuming that Cash is taking care of Charlie, because Charlie has started shooting.
So that's what you got to
Cash
figure
is
out.
covering
There
Charlie.
You go.
All the actors were trained in sniper firing, and we all did a lot of research on, you know, how snipers work and how they spot people and the trajectory of bullets in the air, and there's lots of really interesting facts about how those guys work.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, Mark. Don't need you wet enough, guys. Feeling good? We're good! Your cams rolling. Ready, and 3, 2, 1, action!
We had this fight in the rain in this wonderful quarry, but that was night work, and it was raining. We were putting rain in there. It was Tom's idea, the rain.
The tone of the fights were there, and we always talked about each one has to have its own story, but it's propelling the story, propelling the characters.
And to build on that philosophy, and each fight had a different philosophy that way. It had a different story that we wanted to tell. And the first one starts out pretty funny. You're with Reacher, you're confident, you feel like you're going to come out on top. The second one, you're not so sure. And then, of course, there's the fight at the end with Jai Courtney, where the emotional drive of the scene is completely different. And it's one in which now the whole movie has been building up to this, and it's where Reacher finally lets his anger out.
It's fantastic. It looks fantastic. It's amazing atmosphere and a great fight. But 12 hours at night in a quarry, oh, that was hard work. But you know, in the end, you know, anything that's good is normally hard.
Close focus, what makes Reacher unique in the world of book series is that he has no job and no home. Every other crime series, literally, the guy has a job. He's either a private eye, or he's a police captain, or he's a police detective, or whatever, and he's working somewhere, wherever it might be, LA, Chicago, Boston. He's rooted in a place, in a particular job. And what makes Reacher utterly unique is that he has no job, he has no location. He has a past, he's got skills from the past, but he has no current involvement, so he can be anywhere and do anything. And in a way, that's why the series is so fresh, even after 17 books, because I'm never doing the same page one. Everything is different from one book to the next book, which gives me tremendous freedom. It means that the thing never gets stale for me, and I think if it's not stale for the writer, then it's not going to be stale for the reader. Reacher's backstory is that, you know, he's an American citizen, absolutely served in the American military, but by circumstances has never spent much time in the US. I think the backstory says only a couple of times as a kid and only a couple of times as an adult, and then mostly then confined to military duties on certain bases. So he is looking at America with a foreigner's eyes, essentially, with a stranger's eyes. He's seeing stuff for the first time, exactly like I am. And it is fascinating when the rest of the world tends to be very densely populated, very settled, very cheek by jowl, small. It's a small world in most other parts of the planet, and yet the continent of North America is just vast. You know, as soon as you go through the East Coast, and then you're into these empty spaces with secret towns and ghost towns and abandoned towns and lonely roads that go nowhere. And for me, coming from Europe, that's inherently fascinating. And therefore, there have been Reacher stories in New York City, all over the place, you know, DC, Chicago, and so on. But in a sense, yeah, the core of the Reacher legend is in the vast, empty interior. The origin of the character dates way back in history, you know, literally thousands of years. The idea of the mysterious stranger, the noble loner, the knight errant who shows up in the nick of time, completely unexplained, no past, no future, just today, here he is. He solves the problem, and then he rides off into the sunset. And we've seen that repeated throughout history, obviously during the Westerns, but also way before that, all the way back to the Middle Ages, all the way back to those Scandinavian sagas, really way back into history. So he's a historic paradigm in that sense. He's just the 21st century version of it. And all those same traits. He shows up unexplained, he solves the problem, and he moves on. And the moving on is a crucial part of that myth. He always tries to stay out of trouble. This is not a guy looking for trouble. He wants a quiet life, and yet he can't walk away from something that needs fixing. But the backstory is way back long ago, he promised his mother he would always give him the chance to walk away. And he does, every time, he says.
It's your last chance to walk away.
You wanted this is your last chance, walk away now, or you get what you get. And I think that works for the movie audience, I think it works for the book readers, because we live in a very civilized world. We live in a world that has rules and order and procedure and courts and all that kind of stuff. And we're happy with that. That's the price of civilization. We understand that. We're civilized people and we know that. But in our heart, wouldn't it be great just to sort of mete out that kind of justice? It would be so much less frustrating. It would just be direct and to the point, which is why I think the audience responds to it so well, if it's fair. And of course it is fair with Reacher, because not only does he warn them first, but you know that those bad guys deserve it. Aging Reacher is an issue, yeah, because you can't start your series with the main character 9 years old. You got to start him somewhere that is plausible. And then of course, if the series is successful, which you don't know that it's going to be, but if it is, then of course you've started the guy at 36 and he's getting older all the time. There have been a couple of prequels which kind of don't count in terms of the aging process, and the last several books have been sequential, immediately one after the other, in terms of days rather than years. So he's not quite plus 17 years, you know, it's considerably less than that, but there's no doubt about it, he is getting older. But all along, actually, Reacher has been a mixture of brain and brawn. Some of those books have been cerebral, you know, some of the clues have been incredibly academic. For action books, you know, some of the clues have been punctuation on a piece of paper and so on. And so the cerebral side to him can be emphasized a little bit. The physical side, at the moment, he's fine. You know, he's doing well. If we continue another 10 or 20 years, then yeah, we're going to face an issue where maybe he's going to have to slow down a little bit. The hardest thing that I find in writing, and this is bizarre and I would never have predicted it, the hardest thing is coming up with names for people. Your name could be in the next book for all I know, because it's a, you know, then I don't have to solve that problem. I didn't even have a name for the main character. I knew what I wanted him to be and everything about him, but I didn't have his name. And it needed to be a good name because I was thinking, fingers crossed, this could run for years, you know, and the name needs to be good. I was writing because I was out of work. When you're out of work, you're available for helping out your wife with errands. So she said, you got to come to the supermarket with me and haul home the stuff. So I went to the supermarket, and every time that I go to a supermarket, literally, I walk in and a little old lady says, you're a nice tall gentleman, could you reach me that can? So my wife said, you know what, if this writing gig doesn't work out, you could be a reacher in a supermarket. And I thought, that's a good name. I think all writers have a kind of what-if component built into their heads, so that they read a story in the newspaper, they see it on television or online or whatever, and immediately you're thinking, what if? What if it happened like this? But what if that happened? And you just go down this road. And then I think for me in particular, the lucky break for me is that I can put stuff on a page. You know, that's my skill. But aside from that, I'm a completely ordinary person. And therefore, what interests me is what interests the audience. It's natural. If I'm into it, they're into it. And, you know, that's done me a lot of good. It's not that I'm writing for an audience. I am the audience. I believe, for me personally, the first draft is always the best draft. I have a kind of working motto, do it once and do it right. And it is a snapshot of who you were. It is absolutely who you were during that 6 months that you were writing it. And so to me, it feels kind of dishonest in a way to go back and fix it. You know, you can't fix your mistakes retrospectively. You can't do that in life anyplace else. Why should you do it in writing? Plus, this is odd, you know, writers are odd people. When we're doing it, it is real. You know, this stuff is really happening. For the moment that you're writing that sentence, it is real. And my editor will sometimes say things like, wouldn't it be better if this happened before that? And I'll say, it might be better, but it didn't. In general, for me, the best book is always the next one. It's a very forward-looking job, in my opinion, that once a book is done, I'm a bit like Reacher, once it's done, it's done. You know, I don't want to revisit it, I don't really want to think about it, that's the past, that has happened, and I'm looking ahead. And the next book is the one with all the possibilities. The next one could be the great one, the next one could be the perfect one. You haven't started it yet, to put it crudely, you haven't screwed it up yet. The potential is all still there. So my enthusiasm is always for the one I'm about to start. There's plenty of stuff. I mean, I love certain parts of certain of the books, and in general, I just like I like the way that there's one particular line that occurs in practically all the books that has become kind of legendary for Reacher creatures, which is Reacher said nothing. Because it sums up, this is a quiet guy, a lonely guy, a thinker. He's not going to say something just for the sake of saying it. He spends a lot of the time just being quiet and thinking. And in a way, the fact that that line has become so prominent is a good thing. You know, that's who I want Reacher to be, the guy who says nothing.
Thank you for Jack Reacher. So much fun.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you for being a reader. Really appreciate it. The fans are incredibly diverse. I think the youngest I ever met was 9 years old, and the oldest I ever met was 101. And some of them are hardcore. The Reacher creatures, totally hardcore.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Have a good one.
Loads of people write in with help and advice. If you make a mistake, somebody's flying the helicopter wrong, we will hear from 150 helicopter pilots telling us what the problem is. If we make a mistake with a gun, we'll hear from 10,000 gun enthusiasts what mistake we made. And yeah, most of them are incredibly constructive, incredibly well-meaning. They just want to be part of it. You know, Reacher is theirs, absolutely. And I believe that. I believe that entertainment is a two-way street. First of all, it is created, then it is consumed, then it exists. And so really the reader is doing half the work. The reader's imagination is integral. So they have every right to write in and tell me what they think. And generally speaking, yeah, they're very, very engaged. I mean, they say all kinds of things. They're ready to be critical, but it's done with a good heart. It's well-meaning, most of it.